Why is a soldier branded a disgrace, yet bearing an insignia only the most covert operators are allowed to tattoo? At Camp Coburn, Arizona, she's the name whispered behind backs. The sole survivor of a botched mission no one is allowed to mention. Every step she takes is an uncomfortable presence among her comrades, despised, yet impossible to ignore. But then one day, when her sleeve tears, revealing a forbidden tattoo, everything changes. What lies behind that tattoo? And why would the entire system want her silenced forever? All right, dear audience, get ready for a story that will leave you in awe. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly empathize with what I'm about to share here. And drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see viewers from every corner of the globe. At Fort Strike, she did not walk among soldiers as one of them. She slipped past them like a shadow. No one met her eyes. No one addressed her rank. They whispered nicknames behind her back, as though her presence were a contagion to avoid. In what was meant to be a safe rear area, she became subject to a cruel discipline, nowhere in any manual yet carried out daily as steadily and precisely as any training drill. A glance, a sneer, an implied nod, signals shared in silence, no officer needed. Everyone knew their role in this morale-breaking game. They did not scream at her. They did not strike. They did not have to. A heavy M110 rifle was slapped down on the bench. Metal clashed with a chilling clang, not because they needed her to repair it, but to create a moment. Then a voice rang out, deliberately louder than necessary, targeting her silence. "Align this one properly. Don't shake. Arms guard." Laughter rippled through the room, not at the joke, but at her lack of response. They did not wait for her to speak. She never had, and that silence was their cruelest reward. It confirmed their power. But Jessica Marlowe was no passive victim. She simply refused to fight with the weapons they knew. While laughter echoed around her, she knelt before the rifle as if the world outside had vanished. Her hands, calloused at the joints, moved with cold precision. No hesitation. Not a tremor. She removed the stock, inspected the sight assembly, turned the adjustment wheel as though each component were part of her body. This was not submission. It was a declaration. While they laughed, she was crafting a mechanical masterpiece. Her silence was not surrender. It was armor. A trench. The only boundary between what remained of her and a world determined to cast her aside. No one understood. And no one cared. They saw a woman. They saw a name absent from the honor roll. They saw a file full of gaps and censored events, and imagined the rest, and they acted as if those imaginings were true. She never protested. Never. Not because she had nothing to say, but because words, in this place, carried no weight. She had tried on day one, month one. But the glances never changed, the laughter never ceased. And so she learned. In silence, she preserved the rest of herself. Her uniform, standard issue, was never tailored to her frame. Fabric stretched at the shoulders, gaped at the hips, a feminine shape forced into a masculine form, making her stand out in the worst way. Yet she did not alter it, nor complain. That too was part of the trial, another way to test how far she would endure. Each day at Fort Strike was a battle, without gunfire, without shouts. Only cold stares, half-jest remarks, orchestrated disregard like a staged play. And she, the lead actor, had no lines. But in that silence, she knew. They had never won. Each time her hand touched metal, each time she aligned a rifle perfectly, Each time she completed her work faster than anyone expected, she reaffirmed her own existence, correctly, without their approval. They did not know this. She did not need them to. Fort Strike may have been where they tried to drown her, but here, with every movement she made and every taunt she passed through without bowing, she was quietly reconstructing the image of a soldier, not seeking glory or praise, but simply demanding to be done right and to exist in her own way. 18 months ago, Maya ceased to be a soldier in any ordinary sense. She and 5 others were severed from the system, their names erased from official records, every link to their past cut. No dog tags, no insignia, no right to exist. The only mark they carried was a jet-black tattoo on her left arm, a chimera twisting in cold, sharp lines. No one explained it. No one asked. But all 6 understood. It was their final identity, their only remaining family. The operation called Chimera never entered the books. Location: a remote, unnamed mountain range in a country the U.S. government never officially acknowledged deploying troops to. Objective: an anonymous warlord, believed responsible for hundreds of chemical weapon killings. No one but them could reach him, and no one expected them to return. For the first 3 days, they moved like shadows, no sound, no footprints left behind. The 6 of them blended into the terrain, slipping between rock faces. Communications were completely severed. Each held a role, a skill, like 6 parts of a single body moving by reflex. Then, on the 4th day, hell erupted without warning. It wasn't a battle. It was a calculated execution. Heavy machine gun fire screamed through the boulders. Their hiding place was encircled from multiple directions. Someone had betrayed them. In the first 10 seconds, 2 fell. In a minute, 3 more were critically wounded. Only Maya and Evans remained. Evans, the cold, taciturn technician, now groaning, both hands pressing against a belly wound. His blood seeped into the camouflage fabric, spreading a dark stain. His face went pale. His eyes fought to stay focused, but dimmed. There was no time for mourning. No choice, but action. Her memory now replayed a sequence of urgent, inhumanly precise actions. She pulled out a signal mirror, polished long before, her father's memento from his Navy days. She angled the glass carefully, calculated the reflection. A blinding beam of sunlight shot into the sniper's scope, positioned on the hillside. A fleeting pause from the enemy. Enough. Her other hand had already triggered an aluminized thermite grenade, aimed at the propane cache across the valley. The explosion followed almost instantly, a roaring inferno, thrusting a dense column of flames skyward. Shrapnel, dust, panic swept the area, providing the only cover for their escape. She did not run immediately. She turned back. Evan's final glance met hers, quiet, without blame. His lips tried to form words, but no sound came. She bent over, removed from his pack the data drive, containing all the evidence of the weapons trafficking network. His eyes closed as her hand withdrew. There would be no one else to tell this story. What followed was a chaotic delirium. She ran. She crawled. She fought. No one counted the cuts or the times she collapsed and rose again. Pain became her silent companion, always by her side, but never speaking. For 4 days, she survived on pure instinct, eating crumbs of ration bars, sipping drops of distilled water, avoiding any sign of human life. She hid like a wounded animal, resilient, ruthless, utterly alone. When Maya finally crossed the border, her legs could barely stand. She was found utterly exhausted, her hand still clenched around the data drive as if it were the last piece of her heart. And perhaps it was. In a sterile briefing room in Europe, she sat before senior officers. She recounted every detail, concise, precise, free of emotion. They nodded, they took notes, they offered no comfort. When her account ended, no one told her she had done the right thing. They merely announced, "This operation never existed. And you were never there." The truth was preserved. She was allowed to live. But her teammates were not. And her honor, her real honor, was buried with them. For Maya, that was the steepest price of survival. To live, but be forbidden even to remember. When Maya returned, no one waited for her at the airport. No comrades lined up to greet her. No eyes regarded her as a soldier home from the battlefield. All that remained was a heavy canvas bag, a faded jacket, and a service record so distorted that the truth was unrecognizable. Her name did not appear in the internal bulletin. There was no commendation, no handshake, only the cold notes in her file. Mission disoriented, lack of coordination, morale collapse. Those words did more than strip away her achievements. They stole her right to grieve. At Fort Strike, she was no longer seen as a soldier. She was assigned to the logistics yard, dismantling faulty munitions and cataloging old weapons. To those who had never heard her name, she was merely that girl from the warehouse, a non-entity unworthy of attention or trust. And to those with a passing familiarity, she was a cautionary tale, a prime example of silent failure. No one knew about Chimera. No one knew about the data drive she brought back. And because they did not know, they filled the gaps with their worst imaginations. They built the image of a special ops soldier who had broken, fled, and abandoned her teammates. A survivor was not a hero, but a suspect. The cruelty of this era needed no weapons. It left no blood, no visible wounds. It crept into every whisper, every sidelong glance, every inconsequential post on the internal network. A target dummy rigged with a wig and an oversized coat, holding a rifle backwards, captioned, "Don't freeze up on us, Rasta." A joke with no one to take responsibility. A viral punchline. And then a hashtag, #washed up. One word, enough to obliterate any effort to exist. She saw it. Everyone saw it. Yet no one spoke. She did not file a complaint, not because she was weak, but because she understood that no report could restore a truth already twisted by a system determined to forget her. Rather than fight back, she chose silence, not as surrender, but as the only way to preserve what remained of herself. In the cold storeroom, she worked long hours, quietly and precisely. Each rifle cleaned, each round counted was her proof that she still controlled something. But no one noticed. They only saw the silence, and from that silence, they inferred weakness. Until one day, a gaze settled where none ever had. It belonged to Lieutenant Hayes, a recent SEAL transfer, still bearing the hardened edge of a special ops soldier fresh from the field. He spoke little. He merely watched. When Maya bent to lift a heavy crate of ammunition, her sleeve slipped, revealing part of the jet-black tattoo on her arm. It was only a fleeting moment, but long enough for someone who knew how to see. Hayes said nothing then, yet something inside him shifted. A few days later, he began to ask questions, not directly, not forcefully, only casual inquiries, appearances in the armory, glances he did not avoid. She did not answer, but she did not shy away. In a world that had refused to listen, that gaze was the first to carry no prejudice, and that, for Maya, was a silent yet profound turning point. She did not know whether he would uncover the truth. She did not know whether that look alone could tear through the thick shell of lies. But she knew one thing. At this base, finally, there was someone who did not turn away. And sometimes, all a person needs to stand firm is a gaze unburdened by judgment, a small but steadfast presence, someone who did not see her as that girl from the warehouse. That was all, but it was an entire hope, a tiny crack in the 2-year ice that had frozen her self-worth. Dear audience, take a moment to relax or grab a drink, then stay tuned for more unexpected twists. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see viewers from every corner of the globe. Comment 1 if you enjoyed the story, so we can continue bringing you more great tales. Lieutenant Nathan Evans never imagined that a single fleeting detail could shatter his faith in the very system he served. He was the newcomer, a freshly commissioned officer from West Point, his uniform still crisply pressed, his mind brimming with untainted ideals. To him, honor was the backbone of a soldier, and everything on paper was truth. At least, that's what he believed. That day, during an inspection of technical maintenance, Evans stood beside Maya as she knelt to check the rear axle of a mine-resistant vehicle. The massive tire was jammed. 2 other soldiers had wrestled with it all morning without budging it. But Maya stepped in, said nothing, placed her hands on the rubber rim, squeezed, and lifted. Her body tensed, silent, yet potent with strength. In an instant, a seam on her sleeve strained and tore wide open. A portion of her tattoo was revealed, angular, jet black, cold as if carved rather than inked. It was not any insignia he recognized, not a unit he'd ever trained with, certainly not part of the regular roster. Evans glimpsed it for only a heartbeat, but it planted itself in his memory like a key without a lock, an echo from a world he'd never known. He said nothing to her. He simply turned away, yet suspicion smoldered in his heart. He didn't know exactly what he'd seen, but he knew this was not the mark of someone left behind for weakness. That night, he began to search, not through official channels, not via open military databases, but through hidden depths, forgotten archives, encrypted forums using outdated protocols where veteran officers traded secrets in code. No specific keywords, just a hunch, a hunt for something that shouldn't exist. One night, then a second. Leaked documents, tampered reports, fading traces of unofficial units. And then, in a half-deleted post, he saw the snippet. Kraken. Strategic-level covert unit. Not part of the standing forces. No records. No designation code. Identification mark. Asymmetric geometric tattoo on the left arm. His heart pounded. That was it. Evans didn't sleep that night, not out of fear, but because of the turmoil taking shape. The story he'd been told about Maya, the cold woman from the armory, no longer matched the picture he'd painted in his mind. Every fragment he knew about her was now cast in doubt. Her silence, the unwavering gaze, the way she disassembled an M110 faster than any technician he'd ever seen, all took on new meaning. He didn't know what he would do with this truth. He didn't yet know whom to trust. But he understood one thing. Her silence was no longer passive. It was a shield for something greater, something the system had buried. Then, as he hesitated over documents he hadn't yet saved, another event occurred, unscheduled, unpredictable. General Marcus Thorne arrived at Fort Strike without warning. No escort, no welcome ceremony, no cameras, just an armored vehicle that drove straight to the heart of the base and halted in the courtyard without so much as an alert. Within an hour, Evans was summoned to a makeshift command center Thorne had set up. The guard at the door said only, "The general wants to see everyone connected to the Western Armory." Evans entered and found Maya already there. She showed no expression. Her sleeve had been rolled down again, concealing the tattoo, but her eyes, for the first time, were no longer cold. They held an expectant light. Then General Thorne's gaze fell on her. For a heartbeat, he said nothing, yet the air in the room shifted. Evans felt it distinctly. Something was being summoned, not a report, but the truth. A truth that, until that moment, only Maya had carried. And now she was no longer alone with it. General Thorne strode into the base without warning. He brought no ceremonial fanfare, no honor guard, no cameras, only his presence, which caused Fort Strike to hold its breath. To the veteran soldiers, his name carried the weight of missions never recorded in history. To the younger troops, he was legend, the embodiment of a generation that bowed to no one. He asked no questions. He waited for no report. He simply walked through the technical bay where Maya knelt, calibrating the navigation unit of a new drone. She did not sense him drawing near. She did not look up. Her eyes were fixed on the screen. Her hands moved methodically, adjusting screws with the precision and silence of someone tuning her own body. Only when his footfall halted behind her did Maya glance up. Her eyes met his. No surprise, no fear, only a steady, unflinching gaze. Thorne observed her in silence. Then his eyes settled on her torn sleeve. Part of her tattoo emerged, familiar enough that he needed no confirmation. He knew that symbol. No explanation required. Only one unit had ever borne it, and he had helped create them. He looked at her once more. Then, without ceremony, he spoke. "The roar of the chimera," he said. Maya straightened instantly, as though reflexive. Her boots clicked, her hand rose in salute. And when she spoke, it was no longer the voice of the forgotten. It was the sound of a warrior returned from realms where no one expected survival. "General," just 2 words, but the entire base fell silent. 2 years she had held her tongue. 2 years she had borne scornful looks and cutting jibes. And now, with a single response, she shattered the invisible wall that had encased her in humiliation. Within an hour, the base's main conference room became an impromptu tribunal. No jury, no lawyers, only truth and those who had to face it. Thorne sat at the head of the table. Before him lay a slender dossier, edged in black, bearing no label. Maya stood in a corner, her posture rigid, her expression calm. Lieutenant Evans stood beside her, his shoulders taut as bowstrings. The 3 soldiers who'd posted the mocking video were summoned too. They sat opposite, no longer laughing, their gazes shifty, hands trembling. Thorne opened the dossier. He did not read the report in the usual way. He narrated step by step the path Maya had walked in Operation Chimera, from the moment of the ambush to her reversal using a signal mirror, to the 4-day trek through hostile terrain clutching the data drive. He offered no praise, yet his voice was grave and weighty, each phrase a silent verdict on those who had turned their backs. Then he nodded. An aide brought up the first screen. The image flickered into view, grainy, shaking, yet unmistakable. The camera mounted on the helmet of a fallen teammate had captured Maya's final act, her body lunging forward, forming a living shield for retreating comrades. Flames tore at their flank. Rounds whizzed past her ears. Her face was cold, focused, utterly unpanicked. Thorne said nothing. He nodded again. A second screen lit up, displaying the TikTok video, The dummy in a wig, the oversized coat, the rifle held backwards, the mocking voice, the laughter. An oppressive silence filled the room. The contrast was brutal. On one screen, a soldier fighting for others' lives. On the other, fools oblivious, yet amused. No one spoke. Only the absurd background music played from the clip. Thorne turned his gaze to the men who'd posted the video. His eyes were ice. No anger, merely the cold light of truth. He needed no scolding, no lengthy verdict. He simply pointed out in silence. On one screen was courage. On the other was cowardice. Honor was finally returned to its rightful bearer. And shame, at last, found its true owner. Maya did not choose the path easiest to understand. She declined every offer to return to the front lines. She refused medals, promotions. She spurned the glittering titles the system hastily bestowed to patch the hole in her honor. Not because she lacked strength, not because she was weary, but because she understood deeply. The most dangerous battlefield lies not beyond borders. It exists in mess halls, in stifling conference rooms, in every sneer of doubt when a silent woman walks the hallways. Maya no longer sought merely to survive. She wanted to leave something behind, not with gunfire or badges, but with thought, with perspective, with stories no one had yet told rightly. She applied for transfer to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, not to become propaganda, but to teach, something she once believed she had no right to do. She would stand before young men and women in crisp uniforms, faces unmarked by the pain of rejection for the weight of their truth. She sought to plant a different seed, of courage without applause, of wounds needing no bandage, of truth requiring no permission to live. On her first day in the classroom, Maya entered. Before her were rows of eager eyes, some curious, a few defiant. She stood in her tailored training uniform, no longer ill-fitting, no longer a hiding place. She was herself, a figure as steady as she was untamed, exuding an authority beyond rank. She did not begin with introductions. No title, no campaign name. She simply rolled back her left sleeve. On sun-kissed skin appeared the tattoo, angular, jet black, haunting in its simplicity, a symbol expunged from every official record, a composite beast, strange, inexplicable, beyond words. It simply existed. A whisper rippled through the room. Silence tightened like wire. Then, Maya spoke. She did not tell her story for absolution. She no longer needed validation. She spoke to open another door in her audience's minds. About how prejudice can kill a soldier without a single shot. About the labels society slaps on us simply because we remain silent, because we survive. She spoke of the price of truth, not to expose her pain, but to remind them sometimes courage is not stepping into battle, but standing firm after you've returned. And she asked them, cadets destined to be generals, commanders, heroes of the next generation, have you ever looked at a soldier you didn't understand and decided who they were simply because they weren't like you? She needed no answer. She needed them to remember that question when they left the lecture hall. Maya did not return to the battlefield. Instead, she became the maker of those who would, carrying a vision no longer narrow, no longer hasty. She could not erase what had happened to her, but she transformed it into the foundation for something else, something that could not be warped by hashtag or jeering glance. Maya's story ends in silence. No cannon fire, no grand speech. Yet what she leaves in the minds of the next generation will echo forever. Perhaps that is today's most valuable message. Honor needs no crowd to affirm it. Courage needs no praise. But truth always needs someone brave enough to speak it. If you've watched this far, thank you for listening. We hope this story touches something in you. A memory, a thought, someone you once knew. Share this video with a veteran, a loved one, or anyone who's ever felt misunderstood. Don't forget to subscribe so we can bring you more untold stories. Leave a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. Perhaps you'll inspire the next chapter. Thank you for listening. And please remember, sometimes a single fair gaze is all it takes to start anew.